Denita Barrett's cause of death had been ruled a homicide. They said it was very clear strangulation.
She was always a show-ducking girl.
911 call came through. The hotel staff had located another body.
It's uncommon to have 2 women killed within a week by asphyxiation. I noticed several cameras facing directly at the room that Ashley was murdered in. We see that the suspect is leaving. He's walking quickly. We need to find out who he is. I want to get this person off the streets immediately.
Denita was living on Annapolis Road with her boyfriend Justin and her 2-year-old son. Her daughter was 5 years old and living with her grandma, but she still made time to see her and be around her. She was a good mom. Denita didn't like her name. She preferred to be called Lexi. We met 2014, 2015. A year before she had her first daughter, and we just never left each other's side after that. She was like my best friend. She was always a show-ducking girl, and we went through like everything together in our teenage years. She was like the realest person you could ever meet. We was planning to see each other. I texted her early in the day just to check on her, and she responded back like she was okay, and I went to work. I didn't hear from him again after that.
This Baltimore City 911, yes, address of your emergency.
Shortly after midnight on March 22nd of 2021, 911 operators told us that we had a suspicious death at Annapolis Road. An adult female was found unresponsive. Primary officer arrived. The civilians on the sidewalk, the victim's sister, they informed him that the deceased, Miss Barrett, was inside the dwelling. He reports Denita was laying in the middle of the floor on her stomach.
EMS are already on the scene.
The medics could not revive her. I get there in maybe 15, 20 minutes after the call. Myself and Detective Scott entered the residence. It appeared that there was no forced entry into the house. Things seemed neat and orderly. Denita's cell phone was next to her body. And we noticed that there was an unwrapped condom in the room. Medical examiners examined Miss Barrett's body on the floor. The body was in full rigor mortis, so we assumed it had been there probably at least 8 to 12 hours. The medical examiner didn't find any injuries that you could see with the naked eye. It left us a little puzzled as far as the cause of death.
Let me know what you find.
But I felt in my gut that it wasn't natural.
Detective McDonnell heads outside to speak to the victim's sister, Diana.
Tell me what happened here.
She informed us that she was brought to the location by Denita's boyfriend, Justin. And he's the one that actually discovered Denita's body.
Go on.
He told Denita's sister that he had gone over to the house. There were no lights on. He actually tripped over the body.
Instead of calling 911, Justin phoned Denita's brother and sister.
What?
And then they went to the location. After they went in and saw the body, her brother called 911.
Justin fled the scene soon after.
We were informed Justin had been in a car parked across the street, but prior to our arrival, he left the scene.
He just drove off.
Denita's sister knew the boyfriend's first name was Justin, and that's all the information she had.
Okay. What else can you tell me about Denita?
Denita's sister was very candid in telling us that Denita was a prostitute, that she utilized her house there on Annapolis Road as a place to meet her customers. I can only surmise one of two things happened. She was either killed by a customer or she was killed by Justin. Denita had only been prostituting for about 6 months, and that she was doing it solely to provide a better life for her and her son. She assured me that the only substance that Denita had ever used was marijuana.
Okay. Thank you. McDonnell.
I got a phone call from the OCME's office, and they informed me that Denita's cause of death had been ruled a homicide by asphyxiation. They said it was very clear it was strangulation.
The news of Denita's death spreads fast.
My cousin called me like, yeah, oh my God, Dad, I'm sorry I gotta be the person to tell you, but Lexi is gone, yo. So I'm crying, and like, me and her have been through so much together. And I'm asking her, like, what happened? She couldn't really tell me what happened. I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, she just had her son. Like, she didn't even get to watch him grow up and see neither one of her children grow to their teenage years, take them to school, and none of that.
Two detectives from my squad did an area canvass, and they spoke to a young lady who lived several doors down from Denita's house. She informed them that approximately a year ago, Denita and her boyfriend had gotten into a loud altercation that ended with hands put on her neck, but they didn't know of a police report and if anything ever became of it. Justin became more of a person of interest, so we had our homicide operations unit start looking for Justin.
No more neighbors come forward with information, so investigators look for electronic witnesses.
Detectives canvassed the area to find ring cameras or store surveillance cameras. Hopefully we could see someone going in the house, and they also informed me of a CCTV camera, city-owned, at the top of the block of Annapolis Road in front of the firehouse. Denita's house is probably several hundred yards away from this camera.
While they wait for access to the CCTV footage, investigators examine the items recovered from Denita's home.
Detectives had searched the home and found her cell phone. They had requested a warrant to look through her phone to figure out who she had last been in communication with.
Cell phones are a wealth of information, but almost all phones now have passcodes. Believe it or not, it's more common than you would think. People use either their birthday, their kid's birthday. So I used Denita's child's birthday, which actually opened the phone.
There were a lot of calls and missed and unanswered text messages. But there was a text conversation in Miss Barrett's phone that was the last message that she had responded to. She had directed somebody who was planning on meeting her to her neighbor's house, to their back door, rather than to her address. I would think she wanted to see who was going to be meeting her before that person knew where she lived.
It's a customer she actually wants to date. And then she'd call them over and they'd utilize the back door of her residence instead of the front door. That way, you know, your neighbors don't see people coming and going in the front of the house. Denita had never responded to any more messages after 1:40. There were a lot of incoming, but she never responded to them.
Hey, I've got a time frame.
They gave us a time of 1:40 as approximately the time that we believe the assault had occurred. We ran that number through our databases in the department.
Yeah. Can you run a number for me?
While they wait for the results of the check, investigators analyze the CCTV footage.
Go to the Annapolis Road camera and start at 1:40.
This particular camera we had on Annapolis Road It panned from one location and it would go around before it came back again.
Punch in there.
As we were watching the CCTV cameras, as it panned down towards Denita's house, we saw an individual several hundred yards down the street. We were watching the CCTV pan down towards Denita's house. The distance was so great that we couldn't tell if the individual was going to her house.
Can you clean it up?
We couldn't get a good description of the person, even what they were wearing. It's close to the time where we think the time of death was. So we were a little excited that maybe if this person had left the house and walked back up towards the camera, hopefully we could see this person again. When our cameras are rotating, you more or less hold your breath for the next rotation.
It usually takes about 45 seconds for the camera to rotate fully around. Sometimes the camera footage is so frustrating, right? When you need it to be on one side of the street and the camera is inevitably on the other side of the street.
They're gone.
We never saw him come back out of the house. We assumed it probably was one of the neighbors.
Okay, let's keep looking through it.
We kind of concentrated on the time between 1:30 and 2:30 down Annapolis Road. We knew she wasn't using the front door for her customers, but we were hoping we'd see something, maybe someone stop out front and then go around the back of the house. My partner noticed a delivery van coming out of an alley. Directly underneath, or pretty much underneath, a CCTV camera in front of the firehouse.
That's odd.
It's very uncommon for people to drive in these alleys in this area. There's a lot of debris and trash in the alleys. Once it pulled out, it made a right turn on Annapolis Road, and it appeared to stop in front of Denita's house. We never see anyone get out of the vehicle or go back into the vehicle.
Punch in on the plate. I can't read it.
It was parked there for longer than you would expect a delivery truck to be.
10, 15 minutes later, that vehicle leaves from in front of Denita's house, makes a U-turn on Annapolis Road. And drives up, back underneath the camera, and out of sight of the camera.
They asked me to subpoena the records from that retail company to see if they could figure out which truck had been in the area at that time and maybe who had been driving it. The company did not have GPS tracking on their van, so we weren't able to determine who had been driving the truck at that time.
Once the van pulls away, you're a little disappointed that it didn't capture what you hoped it would have captured. Seeing Denita alive, would have been a great help as far as closing the timeline in, but we never saw her enter or exit the house.
The footage from the fire station camera reveals no further leads.
There was a camera opposite Denita's house, across the street.
Play this.
It also had some video. Annapolis Road is like 6 lanes across, so it's a good distance across the road. It's not just a smaller city street. The system was so neglected that images really weren't that clear.
Detective McDonnell receives notification of a breakthrough in identifying Denita's boyfriend, Justin.
We obtained a screenshot of Justin. We used facial recognition through the Baltimore City Police Department. We identified Justin as Justin Powell. We ran him through Baltimore City databases, and it was established that he had an open warrant for a handgun violation.
The medical examiner shares the results of Denita's autopsy with investigators.
There was evidence of sexual activity on her body, so we knew that the person that had strangled her had engaged in some sort of sexual activity with her. When you have a sexual component to a crime, you do look towards the domestic partner first. Strangulation has a very personal component to it. You are literally taking the life out of somebody with your own hands.
I was pretty confident Justin was the suspect.
I need a warrant for Justin Powell.
I passed this information on to the Warrant Apprehension Task Force and Homicide Operations, and they went out to search for Mr. Powell. He's now our #1 suspect in the murder of Denita Barrett.
Meantime, Denita's family and friends gather for her funeral.
Denita was well known in the neighborhood. A whole bunch of people came, more than I expected. When her daughter walked up to her casket, her daughter broke down. It was the saddest thing. It was the saddest thing like you could ever see. Like, she asked, "Is that my mommy?" And then just broke down crying. I just started crying. It was so sad. It was so sad. It was so sad.
The Warrant Apprehension Task Force is still trying to locate Justin when 911 receives another call.
This Baltimore City 911, yes, sir, gas of your emergency.
911 call came through hotel staff at the Deluxe Plaza off of Pulaski Highway. Had located another body.
On March 28, 2021, a patrol officer was dispatched to the Deluxe Plaza Motel in Baltimore. The motel staff advised that they went to a guest room who had not checked out on time. They knocked on the door, and after receiving no answer, they used the room key to enter the room. Upon entering the room, they found a deceased female on the ground. The officer notified the homicide unit. We're not sure what we're gonna find when we get there. I get to the room. There's a deceased female laying face down on the ground next to the bed, still wearing clothes. I don't notice any signs of trauma or foul play. There is an empty pill bottle and a drug paraphernalia.
Initially, they thought maybe it was a drug overdose because there was some evidence in the hotel room of recent drug use.
The medical investigator arrives. The victim is rolled over and the body is examined. The victim was strangled and the larynx was broken. I would start looking around the room to help identify the victim. We located a credit card which had the name Ashley Lambert, as well as a cup from Dunkin' Donuts. This time in the investigation, we need to find the family of Ashley Lambert to notify them of her death. We check the police database and we find out that she has family in a neighboring county.
Ashley was at one time my wife, and she is my children's mother. She was very caring and kind and sweet, and she was also really good with children.
My mom, she was very outgoing. She loved to be with family. She really loved to hang out with her kids. She was very open, and she made you feel like you could talk to her about anything, you know. I was never nervous to ever tell her anything. She loved making people feel special.
She was outgoing, opinionated, funny, happy, but she dealt with mental illness. She would go through different periods in her life, but even through all that, she, always tried to be the best mother, tried to be the best wife, daughter, friend.
Ashley started struggling with drugs, which is why the children came to stay with me and why her sons were with her grandparents. She always hoped to get her own place and for the kids to come back to stay with her. She had tried to get help with rehab. It wasn't successful. It's very hard to kick a habit like that. She was a beautiful, kind-hearted person.
In Baltimore, it's uncommon to have 2 women killed within a week, both being found in a room by themselves and both being strangled.
Denita Barrett. It was a very similar case. My job at this juncture is to find Denita's boyfriend, our #1 suspect, Justin, and bring him in for questioning.
Back at the Deluxe Plaza, investigators search for clues that could identify Ashley's killer.
Now that we know this is a murder, it's time to step up the investigation. We need to find witnesses, evidence, video footage to help capture this killer. I noticed that the motel is equipped with several cameras to include the lobby as well as the parking lot, facing directly at the room that Ashley was murdered in. We go back to the security room of the motel where we can now view all the cameras.
That hotel has several cameras. They have one camera near the check-in area. They have one camera that overlooks the parking lots where the doors to the hotel rooms are.
I noticed it's a decent video system. The cameras are not equipped with sound, but you can see clear pictures.
Okay, can you start from where you last saw her?
So I watched the video to find out when the person was last seen alive, to show what led up to the death of Ashley Lambert.
Okay, there she is. You pause it there.
At this time, it was 2:03 p.m. on March 27th.
Okay, just keep it playing.
And I see an individual walking quickly.
Back it up.
An individual in a hoodie and camouflage backpack walks up to the door carrying a white bag.
Zoom in there.
He knocks on the door. Ashley Lambert answers. After a brief conversation, he's led in the room. I continue watching, and the next thing I see is this individual leaving the room approximately 25 minutes later. Seeing that this individual is in the room for only 25 minutes, and now he's leaving the room, walking away quickly, it looks very suspicious to me.
Can you enlarge it?
The hoodie he's wearing is partially covering his face, and the camera footage is not clear enough to identify him. It's frustrating. Not seeing anyone else enter or exit that room, now we know that this individual is our potential killer.
Can you follow him?
I discovered there is an additional camera in the front of the building. This camera showed the entrance to the motel. I noticed that he had a red hoodie and he's standing at a vending machine, digging through his backpack. I could see his face, and it was covered by a mask, but I could tell it was dark-skinned. And the individual walks eastbound on Pulaski Highway, out of the view of the camera footage.
I need a copy of this. Can you bring up the details of who rented the room?
She wasn't the one that rented the room. The room had been rented by a male. He had signed the rental paperwork and had rented the room initially for one night. The detectives learned that he extended the room for a second night.
The hotel staff provided us the name of the person who rented the room, and his name was Michael. The motel provided information on how he paid for the room, as well as his address and phone number. Now we need to find Michael as soon as possible to find out if he's responsible for the death of Ashley. We get to Michael's house and knock on the door. It's in the back of your mind that this could be the potential killer. You have to be careful. You don't know what to expect. You just go in prepared and be ready for anything. Michael answers.
G'day, sir. Can I ask you a couple questions?
He did not match the description of the last individual seen leaving the room. Michael comes outside with us, tries to get us away from his house. He seems a bit nervous. And this time he explains to us that his wife and newborn child are inside the house. He explains that he met Ashley on a dating app, met her at a hotel because he likes to get high. He rented the room the first night, hung out with Ashley, they partied, and he said he left in the morning.
What about the second night?
He later came back to the motel, and Ashley asked him if he would rent the motel for one more night because she had no place to stay. Michael paid for the room.
Did you go back again?
Michael said the last time he saw Ashley was March 27th, the day before Ashley was found murdered. I believe what Michael was telling us. If Michael is not the killer,
Did you play the footage from the motel again?
then we need to find out who is. I want to make sure we get this person off the streets immediately. At this time, I continue watching the video footage to find more clues.
Can you punch in there?
I noticed that the man in the red hoodie is carrying a small white pastry bag before he enters Ashley's room. I need to find out where he purchased this item, which could lead me to additional footage and hopefully his identification. I watched the video footage and I saw the direction where he came from before entering Ashley's room.
Can you bring up the map?
Knowing that this individual in the red hoodie is walking, we wanted to find a location that was within walking distance. And we noticed that there was two locations, a liquor store and a Dunkin' Donuts. They were only a few hundred yards away.
Inside of the hotel room, there was a styrofoam coffee cup from Dunkin' Donuts. So they went to the Dunkin' Donuts.
I immediately noticed that they had cameras on the outside of the establishment. I asked the manager if we could view the footage.
Can you start at 1:30 on the 28th?
They were able to see the same person wearing the same clothing approaching the Dunkin' Donuts 30 minutes before we see this person entering Ashley's room.
Camera footage shows the individual in the red hoodie from before, but is not clear enough to show his face, and he's still wearing a mask before he entered.
Detectives show a picture of the suspect to the restaurant staff. A waitress recalls serving him on the day of Ashley's murder.
Did he make that purchase with cash, or did he use a credit card? Because if he used a credit card to pay for this item, we have a better chance of tracking him down.
Can you get me those transaction details?
Dunkin' Donuts was able to go back into their system and regenerate the receipt that had the credit card information for that purchase.
Because of legal reasons, Dunkin' Donuts is not allowed to give us the information about the person who made the purchase.
I then had to subpoena the bank in order to get the actual records from the bank to show who that bank account belonged to.
Meantime, investigators on the Denita Barrett case receive a list of names from the numbers on the victim's cell.
I've got a hit on the phone.
Detective McDonnell learns the name of the last person to text Denita.
And it came back with a result, and that result was a gentleman called Christopher Tyson. We ran a background check on him because he wasn't a convicted felon. In this database, there were other run-ins he had with different entities, whether it be law enforcement or school, but he did have a past.
I might have a lead.
Up to now, investigators have focused on finding Denita's boyfriend, Justin Powell.
Now I'm like a 50-50. Could it be Justin? Could it be Christopher Tyson? So I was pretty much split down the middle. It could be either one at this juncture. We established that Christopher Tyson had called police himself for a domestic incident, which he was assaulted. That's what he reported. We wanted to talk to the girlfriend who supposedly assaulted him and try to get some background on Mr. Tyson. So myself and my partner responded out to the county to find his girlfriend.
Hi. We're to ask you about Christopher Tyson.
She was not at home at the time, but we spoke to the girlfriend's mother, who told us where Mr. Tyson worked.
Is there anything else you can tell us about him?
He worked for a well-known retailer. That was significant because we saw the van owned by that company on the CCTV creeping out of the alley, stopping and parking in front of Denita's house at the approximate time that we thought the murder had occurred.
The woman tells detectives that her daughter was charged with no crime in connection with the alleged assault on Tyson.
She also said that she thought that he had anger management problems.
Thank you for your time.
Investigators contact the retailer to find out Tyson's position within the company.
Can you tell me what role Christopher Tyson did for you?
His management, at his place of employment, they said he was not a driver. He was only working the warehouse. He didn't have access to the trucks. We were unable to rule out 100% that he didn't have access to the vehicle, but at this juncture, I had no proof that he could have taken one of their vehicles.
While investigators work out how Christopher Tyson connects to Denita Barrett's murder, the detectives on the Ashley Lambert case receive a hit on the bank card used in Dunkin' Donuts.
Once we obtained the subpoena, it only took a few days to find out the name of the person who made that purchase.
Okay.
And the name of the person that used the card was Christopher Tyson.
Tyson?
Detective Steve McDonnell sits diagonal from me, and I remember saying that, oh, we have the name of Christopher Tyson. He then says, wait.
I've got that name on my file.
At that juncture, I felt confident that Christopher Tyson had also committed the murder of Denita Barrett.
At this point in the investigation, Detective McDonnell and I start to work together. Now we need to bring Christopher Tyson in for questioning. We obtain his phone information, and we obtain an order to track his cell phone.
Got it. Let's roll.
His phone was tracked to 2000 block of Bryant Street. A search and seizure warrant was obtained for Christopher's house. The feeling you get when you're about to enter a house where a potential suspect is for murder You get a little fired up. We went to the location, surrounded the house. You get a little excited, a little nervous. You're hoping that they're in there. We execute that search and seizure warrant. When officers entered his room,
Hey!
And we locate Christopher Tyson in the second floor front bedroom. He was found hiding under the bed.
It's your hands! It's your hands!
He was then secured without incident.
Come on, get up! Get hands behind your back. Get up back.
He is then brought down to the homicide office for questioning.
Let's get out. Let's go.
At this time, I conduct the search warrant of Christopher's room. I'm looking for any evidence, anything that will help solve this case.
They knew that they were looking for a backpack that had pretty unique patterns on it, and they were looking for a reddish-brown sweatshirt that he may have been wearing.
And we did locate the camouflage backpack. And within that backpack was Ashley Lambert's phone.
And they found what they believed to be the sweatshirt in the surveillance video. They did find the credit card that Mr. Tyson had used to make the purchase. The numbers matched up on the receipt. They also found a bag full of women's underwear.
It's not common for a murder suspect to keep items from a murder. They don't want to be connected to the murder at all. But I felt like Christopher Tyson was keeping these items almost as a trophy.
Detective Moran interviewed Mr. Tyson first.
Do you know Ashley Lambert?
Christopher is questioned about the murder of Ashley Lambert. No. At first, he denies even knowing her, denies being at that motel. But at this point, we show him a picture of the individual that caught on camera footage wearing the red hoodie and backpack.
Is that you?
He immediately points that out as being himself. As we presented with more and more evidence, he starts to break. Finally, Christopher tells us that he met Ashley on a dating app. He said when he got to the hotel, Ashley was making fun of him, at which he took offense to.
He described it as she started getting angry at him, and that's when he described that he choked her.
He said that before he left the motel, he checked for her pulse, and she was still alive. He then left the area. At that point, him admitting that he strangled her and he was the last person to be seen with her, I was confident that he killed her. Detective Steve McDonnell comes in next.
I go in there and sit in and talk to Mr. Tyson.
So what can you tell me about Denita Barrett?
It's pretty much the same scenario. Mr. Tyson denied ever being in Westport. I'd show him the text messaging.
What about these text messages?
He said, yes, I was in there. You know, I had sex with Miss Barrett, and she made fun of me. We got into an altercation, and I just choked her out. And as I left, I checked her pulse, and she was alive. Maybe someone else killed her after I left. And when we was talking about these people's deaths, he didn't have a lot of emotion. I thought in my mind, there could be more women out there that this guy has assaulted and or killed.
They asked him, have you done this before? And he said something to the effect of, well, why don't you tell me who else you think that I hurt?
He implicated himself enough, and with the corroborating evidence we already had. He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Tyson pleaded guilty to the murder of Miss Barrett and the murder of Miss Lambert.
Tyson enters a special plea that admits the evidence against him would likely result in his conviction. He receives 2 life sentences. Prosecutors charged Denita Barrett's boyfriend, Justin Powell, with no crimes in connection to her death.
I wish every case had a camera pointed directly at my crime scene. That CCTV camera footage, it was the strongest evidence that we could find to show that no one else could have committed this crime. Had he been left on the street for any longer, I have no doubt that there would have been another victim.
I think we definitely took a budding serial killer off the streets of Baltimore.
It's nothing you could do to make up for my best friend's death. I miss our talks. She was my motivation. She was my inspiration. She kept me on my toes, and we kept each other laughing.
Ashley didn't deserve what was done to her. She was taken from her entire family way too soon. She was just senselessly taken. And, you know, she's loved and she's missed. Her memory lives on through my daughters.
I miss how nice she was, and I miss how she would stick up for anybody, and she was always just nice to everybody, and she had like a kind heart.
I miss her, you know, celebrating even the small things with me, because she would definitely be, I think she would be proud, like, of how I am right now.